It's story time. I am a person who is trying to read more, and in the past, I have had issues with finishing books because I can't stay on top of them. So, this is a new way of trying to finish books that I start and inevitably get bored of. So, hopefully, this is a technique that works by posting it out there. I think I'll hold myself more accountable to doing so, but only time will tell. Also, I know a lot of people don't like to read, and so they just like to listen to audiobooks, and so this might help a lot of other people. Also, I just borrowed this book from a friend that seemed very interesting to me, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Now, money is such a big part of our lives today, and has such a psychological effect on all of us, whether it being how do we get it and how do we make a lot of it with the least amount of work possible. So that's hopefully what this book is going to tell me. How can I be a lazy ass and still make money? I also was just recently in Vegas, a place where money is either lost a lot, more often times than not, or money is won, which I have yet to encounter in my 2 trips to Vegas. But hey, maybe after this book, I take a nice trip to Vegas and win some money. The likelihood of that happening is 0, but let's see what this book is about and if it can help us. Okay, so The Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness by Morgan Housel. It's got quite some good acclaims here. One of the best and most original finance books in years by Jason Zweig from the Wall Street Journal. Interesting. Okay, so some quotes here from some famous men. The first one from Napoleon. It says, "A genius is the man who can do the average thing when everyone else around him is losing his mind." Very, very, very good, nice quote. Okay, the world is full of obvious things which nobody by any chance ever observes. Sherlock Holmes. The world is full of obvious things which nobody by chance ever observes. It's crazy. It's crazy how much is in front of us that we barely see on a daily basis. But anyways, Chapter 1. Introduction. The greatest show on earth. I spent my college years working as a valet at a nice hotel in Los Angeles. One frequent guest was a technological executive. He was a genius, having designed and patented a key component in Wi-Fi routers in his 20s. He had started and sold several companies. He was wildly successful. He also had a relationship with money I describe as a mix of insecurity and childish stupidity. He carried a stack of $100 bills several inches thick. Fucking player, man. He's a boss. Showing off that stack. Where was I? Inches thick. He showed it to everyone who wanted to see it, and many who didn't. He bragged openly and loudly about his wealth, often well drunk, and always a props of nothing. A propos of nothing. I also need to get a notebook to write down some words because I'm not going to know all these words. So a propos of nothing. So I'm going to assume. I'm not going to assume anything. I'm going to look this word up later. A propos of nothing. One day he handed one of my colleagues several $1,000s of cash and said, "Go to the jewelry store down the street and get me a few $1,000 gold coins." Fucking playa, man. Just روح يلا. Bring me some gold, please. Yalla. Ngela. An hour later, gold coins in hand, the tech executive and his buddies gathered around by a dock overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Then they proceeded to throw the coins into the sea, skipping them like rocks, crackling as they argued whose went the furthest, just for fun. I would never ever have fun like that in my life, as rich as I get. Hopefully never. God damn, that's a fucking nice life, man. Just throwing $1,000 gold coins, skipping across the ocean. Fuck that. An hour later, I already read that. Days later, he shattered a lamp in the hotel's restaurant. A manager told him it was a $500 lamp, and he'd have to replace it. $500. This man was skipping $1,000 coins across the ocean. You think it's gonna be about to buy 5 of these bitches right now? You want $500? No, that's what I said. You want $500? The executive asked. What is it? Incredulously? What is that word? Incredulously. Okay, so a lot of L's. My dyslexia is kicking in. While pulling a brick of cash from his pocket and handing it to the manager. Here's $5,000. Now get out of my face and don't ever insult me like that again. You gotta know who you're dealing with. Why are you even asking this man? If you're the manager of the hotel to replace it, just be like, I'll put it on your tab. Because get out of my face. Yeah, I'm sorry, like $500. You know this man is flaunting his cash around in front of everybody, and you're gonna try to tell him for $500. Get the fuck out of here. Okay? You may wonder how long this behavior could last, and the answer was not long. I learned years later that he went broke. Surprise, surprise, motherfucker. The premise of this book is that doing well with money has a little to do with how smart you are and a lot to do with how you behave. I feel like it correlates. Your smartness is part of your behavior. You know, smart is a part of behavior, I would think. So, I feel like they correlate together, right? Your behavior and your intelligence. If you're intelligent behavior or not intelligent behavior. But anyways, I'm not the author. Continuing on. And how behave. And behavior is hard to teach, even to really. And behavior is really hard to teach, even to really smart people. A genius who loses control of his emotions can be a financial disaster. That also is very important. Emotions. The moment you let your emotions take control, you will be spending spirally. Whatever that word. Spiral. Shit. R's and L's are difficult. The opposite is also true. Ordinary folks with no financial education can be wealthy if they have a handful of behavioral skills that have nothing to do with the formal measures of intelligence. My favorite Wikipedia entry begins, Ronald James Reed was an American philanthropist, investor, janitor, and a gas station attendant. Ronald Reed was born in rural Vermont. He was the first person in his family to graduate high school. Made all the more impressive by the fact that he hitchhiked to campus each day. Sounds like something in the story my parents would tell me. كنت بمشي 17 ساعة توصل على المدرسة. بياخد ترين وباص وبالبوت آخر شيء تنوصل على المدرسة. This dude right here. For those who know Ronald Reed, there wasn't much else worth mentioning. His life was about as low-key as they come. Reed fixed cars at a gas station for 25 years and swept floors at JCPenney for 17 years. He bought a two-bedroom house for $12,000 at the age of 38. What? Woo! Man, that's a cheap ass fucking what? Oh man, $12,000. Yeah, Jesus. And lived there for the rest of his life. He was widowed at the age of 50. Oh, damn. And never remarried. That's sad. A friend recalled that his main hobby was chopping firewood. This guy, if you've ever watched Parks and Rec, reminds you of Ron Swanson. This guy's the Ron Swanson working at fucking age 9 at the factory mill. But anyways, chopping firewood. Reed died in 2014, age 92. Damn. Hell yeah, buddy. Which is when the humble rural janitor made international headlines. Okay. 2,813,503 Americans died in 2014. Fewer than 4,000 of them had a net worth of over $8 million when they passed away. Ronald Reed was one of them. Damn, he had a net worth of over $8 million. Hell yeah. In his will, former janitor left $2 million to his stepkids and more than $6 million to the local hospital and library. What a man. Those who knew Reed were baffled. Where did he get all that money? It turned out there was no secret. There was no lottery win and no inheritance. Reed saved what little he could and invested it in blue chip stocks. Then he waited for decades on end, as tiny savings compounded into more than $8 million. That's it, from janitor to philanthropist. A few months before Ronald Reed died, another man named Richard was in the news. Richard Foscone, I don't know. Foscone was everything Ronald Reed was not. A Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch executive with an MBA. Foscone had such a successful career in finance that he retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. Former Merrill CEO David Kaminsky praised Foscone's business-savvy leadership skills, sound judgment, and personal integrity. Crain's Business Magazine once included him in a 40 under 40 list of successful business people. But then, like the gold coin skipping tech executive, everything fell apart. In the mid-2000s, Foscone borrowed heavily to expand an 18,000 square foot home in Greenwich, Connecticut that had 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, 7 garages, and cost more than $90,000 a month to maintain. Man, I would never want to listen. I don't get the fascination in big houses. That's just more likelihood of you getting lost, more shit you got to clean. Not that you would clean it, you would pay somebody if you have that kind of money, but it's still fucking massive. I would just getting lost. Getting to the kitchen in the morning will take you 3 hours. What the fuck? Okay. The 2008 financial crisis hit. The crisis hurt virtually everyone's finances. It apparently turned Foscone's into dust. His debt and liquid assets left him bankrupt. I currently have no income. He allegedly told a bankruptcy judge in 2008. First, his Palm Beach house was foreclosed. In 2014, the Greenwich Mansion's turn. And in 2014, it was the Greenwich Mansion's turn. 5 months before Ronald Reed left his fortune to charity, Richard Foscone's home, where guests recalled the thrill of dining and dancing atop a see-through covering on the home's indoor swimming pool, was sold in foreclosure auction for less than 75% than an insurance company figured it was worth. Woo! That is tough. Ronald Reed was patient. Richard Foscone was greedy. That's all it took to eclipse the massive education and experience gap between the two. The lesson here is not to be more like Ronald and less like Richard, though it's not bad advice. The fascinating thing about these stories is how unique they are to finance. In what other industry does someone with no college degree, no training, no background, no formal experience, and no connection massively outperform someone who had the best education, the best training, and the best connections? I struggle to think of any. It is impossible to think of a story about Ronald Reed performing a heart transplant better than a Harvard-trained surgeon, or designing a skyscraper superior to the best-trained architects. There will never be a story of a janitor outperforming the world's top nuclear engineers. But these stories do happen in investing. The fact that Ronald Reed can coexist with Richard Foscone has 2 explanations. 1. Financial outcomes are driven by luck, independent of intelligence and effort. That's true to some extent, and this book will discuss it in further detail. Or 2, and I think more common, the financial success is not a hard science. It's a soft skill where how you behave is more important than it's more important than what you know. Okay? How you behave is more important than what you know. Makes sense. I call this soft skill the psychology of money. The aim of this book is to use short stories to convince you that soft skills are more important than the technical side of money. Okay, so the basics. You got to be able to know the basics. Excuse me. I'm tired. Anyways, I'll do this in a way that will help everyone, from Reed to Fisconi and everyone in between, make better financial decisions. These soft skills are, I've come to realize, greatly underappreciated. Finance is overwhelmingly taught as a math-based field, where you put data into a formula and the formula tells you what to do. This is why I hated math, because that's not what it is. And it's assumed that you'll just go do it. And it's assumed that you'll just go do it. This is true in personal finance, where you're told that you have a 6-month emergency fund and save 10% of your salary. It's true in investing, where we know the exact historical correlations between interest rates and valuations. And it's true in corporate finance, where CFOs can measure the precise cost of a capital. It's not that any of these things are bad or wrong. It's that knowing what we do. Is that knowing what to do tells us nothing about what happens in your head when you try to do it. Okay, so that one didn't make much sense to me. And it's true in the corporate finance, where CFOs can measure the precise cost of capital. Okay, it's not that any of these things are bad or wrong. It's that knowing what to do tells you nothing about what happens in your head when you try to do it. Okay. 2 topics impact everyone, whether you are interested in them or not. Health and money. The healthcare industry is a triumph of modern science. With rising life expectancies across the world, scientific discoveries have replaced doctors' old ideas about how the human body works, and virtually everyone is healthier because of it. I don't know. I mean, yes and no. Yes and no. Yes and no. The money industry, investing, personal finance, business planning is another story. Finance has scooped up the smartest minds coming from top universities over the last 2 decades. Financial engineering was the most popular major in Princeton School of Engineering a decade ago. Is there any evidence this made us better investors? I have seen none. Through collective trial and error over the years, we've learned that to become better farmers, skilled plumbers, and advanced chemists. But the trial and error taught us to become better with our personal finance. But has the trial and error taught us to become better with our personal finances? Are we less likely to bury ourselves in debt? More likely to save for a rainy day? Prepare for retirement? Have realistic views about what money does and doesn't do to our happiness. I've seen no compelling evidence. Most of the reason why, I believe is that what we think about and are taught about money in ways are too much like physics with rules and laws, and not enough like psychology with emotions and nuance. And nuance. And that to me is as fascinating as it is important. Money is everywhere. It affects all of us and confuses most of us. Everyone thinks that it is a little different. Everyone thinks about it a little differently. It offers issues on things that apply to many areas of our life, like risk, confidence, and happiness. Few topics offer more powerful magnifying glass that helps explain why people behave the way they do than money. It is one of the greatest shows on earth. My own appreciation for the psychology of money is shaped by more than a decade of writing on the topic. I began writing about finance in early 2008. What a time to start. Right when everything was going down. Hell yeah. Psychology of money shaped. I wanted to figure out what was happening. The first thing I learned, appreciation for psychology. I began writing about in early 2008. It was the dawn of the financial crisis and the worst recession in 80 years. We're about to beat that. 2023. Not that it's been happening already. We're in the middle of it. Recession 80 years. To write about what was happening, I wanted to figure out what was happening. Okay? To write about what was happening, I wanted to figure out what was happening. But the first thing I learned after the financial crisis was that no one could accurately explain what happened or why it happened, let alone what should be done about it. For every good explanation, there was an equally convincing rebuttal. Every good explanation was an equally convincing rebuttal. Engineers can determine the cause of a bridge collapse because there's an argument if the certain amount of force is applied to a certain area, that the area will break. Physics isn't controversial. It's guided by laws. Finance is different. It's guided by people's behaviors. And I know how I behave might make sense to me, but look crazy to you. The more I studied and wrote about the financial crisis, the more I realized that you could understand it better through the lenses of psychology and history, not finance. To grasp why people bury themselves in debt, you don't need to study interest rates. You need to study the history of greed, insecurity, and optimism. To get why investors sell out at the bottom of the bear market, you don't need to study the math of expected future returns. You need to think about the agony of looking at your family and wondering if your investments are imperiling their future. Imperiling their future. Imperiling your future. I lost my way. Where is it? Building the future. I love Voltaire's observation that history never repeats itself. Man always does. It applies so well to how we behave with money. In 2018, I wrote a report outlining 20 of the most important flaws, biases, and causes of bad behavior I've seen affect people when dealing with money. It is called The Psychology of Money, and over 20 million people have read it. The book is a deeper dive into the topic. Some short passages from the report appear unaltered in this book. What you're holding is 20 chapters, each describing what I consider the most important and often counterintuitive features of the psychology of money. The chapters revolve around a common theme, but exist in their own and can be read independently. It's not a long book. You're welcome. Most readers don't finish this book because they begin. Most readers don't finish the books they begin because most single topics don't require 300 pages of explanation. I'd rather take 20 short points and points you finish. Jesus. The one long one give up on. On we go. Woo! Thank God. I mean, and that's why I'm saying I hate long books. That's why usually I lose interest, because they just ramble on, re-explaining the same points over and over. So hopefully this guy is not going to do that. But yeah, that was just the introduction. Chapter 1. Coming up, you fools. Woo!